in all of our roles and everything, but even as a school secretary especially, is just remembering, not necessarily are we getting overlooked. I think a lot of times people do really appreciate where the secretary's at, but is knowing that our service is for the Lord. It just needs to be everything we do for Him.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Welcome back. I am so excited to get back into this conversation. Just before we do, though, let me remind you to visit our website, teachereditionpodcast.com, to learn more about this show, as well as about our guests. You can also sign up there for our newsletter. Of course, go follow us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And don't forget, this interview can also be viewed now on YouTube. Linda DeGroot is back with us. Linda is a veteran school secretary, now registrar, from Bay City Christian School in Green Bay, Wisconsin. In part one, Linda shared her story of how she became a school secretary. We also talked about her role, the challenges and rewards of working in a school office, and we also even talked about some misconceptions about the school office. I happen to know that most educators really do not have a concept of all the juggling that goes on in a school office, and Linda has given us a little bit of insight into that. So Linda, I'm ready to jump back into the topic. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Yes, and we are so thrilled you're here. School secretaries need to have octopus arms at times. I mean, that's the best way I can think of it. So we have phones ringing, we have guests at the door, we have teachers needing copies, or maybe the copier fixed. There are students with no lunch, and of course, there's some little person who lost a tooth, or, well, another got sick on the way to the office, but didn't quite make it to the trash can. So as teachers and administrators, we can sometimes feel like we carry the load of the school. But talk about distractions and interruptions and multitasking. That is office personnel to a T. So share with us about how you approach that craziness, those days where everything just feels like it's coming at you all at once. What do you think?
I don't, or at least I try not to, run and hide in the back room on those days.
Okay. That is good to
know. Oh, it is. They are more than you would wish for, but less than what you would think, honestly. Most days are quiet and calm, and you just go about the daily business, and, things come and go, the copies, the students, the everything else. And then there's those days where you're right. Oh, somebody broke their arm out on the playground. Oh, and the phones are ringing off the hook all at the same time. And oh, hey, the fire inspector just walked in too and needs to be taken around to inspect the building and everything, because, that's
always when they arrive. Yes.
Right. So it's those kinds of days. I talked about this a couple of years back in one of the workshops I did at one of our conferences about like squirrels in the office and how to deal with all of those squirrels that are just running everywhere, right? They run out into the road just to make you stop, and then they turn around and leave. Okay. So I feel like a lot of times in the office, there's all these squirrels and they're running around, and it's like, okay, how do I get a grip on them, or how do I get them out of my office? Period. So we're on the front time. We're the catch-all for the office and everything. And so the interruptions come all day long. Okay. So after a while, it took a bit to get used to the fact that, okay, I always felt like I was glad I got in when we were small. And so there's not as many interruptions, right, as there are now. I cover the front office for our full-time secretary these days. And I'm like, I don't know how she gets anything done. How did I get anything done? Because there is no time to get anything done, and yet there is. And God's gift is always the time we didn't know we had, and the ability to be able to finish things even in the midst of everything going on. End of the day, all the buses are leaving, the students are going, the parents are there, everything else, and I'm still got a computer full of things to get done and everything else, and I'm done at 4:00, and I go, I finished it. How did I finish that? I don't even know how I finished that. What's going on? So, honestly, first thing, it's for me, God had to teach me patience. everything, right? It's like Colossians talks about being strengthened with all might according to his glorious power unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness. Okay. I've always been kind of an upbeat. I'm an introvert. Weird. Okay, right? You think, no way is she? I am. But at the same time, have really learned to, as I always tell my husband, I've learned how to put my extrovert on when needed and everything. So, just being able to, but joy has been one of those things that, God really taught me early on, and patience is one of those things he just works on me daily. And that thing, so being able to do those things, and have patience with and asking others too, it's like, hey, I'll get with you in just a moment. Let me just finish taking care of this child, or let me grab one of the other girls in the office now, and I'll have her come help you with getting the gift cards that you need. And okay, so and then we also need to have some temperance or as the Bible calls it, or self control. Just not being willing to like just hold it all together, kind of thing. So, got a parent that comes up and they're screaming at you and yelling at you, and being able to be calm and kind and gracious to them. And yet at the same time wanting to like scream back at them inside, right? And not being able to, but then being able to just, okay, it's okay. And realizing honestly, 9 times out of 10 that the parent walks away and I end up sitting there at my desk praying for them, because I go, okay, what just happened in their life that they had to come take it out on me? Because obviously it was a minor thing, or it was, it's like, and it's just blown out of proportion or something like that. It's like, what's going on in their life? What has been happening? And then you come to find out later, because most of these people are people you're doing life with anyway, at church, at in life, period, because they're your friends and your family and things too. And you come to find out something was going on, and you just go, okay, I just need to keep dealing with them with grace. And that's the other part of it, is just Colossians 4:6 says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how ye ought to answer every man. 2 Corinthians 9:8, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work. That gives us the grace. We go ahead and give the grace to others, and we just make sure that we're being kind. It's like, be ye kind, tenderhearted, forgiving one. Okay, honestly, that's a daily mantra in the office, because it's like, we just need to be kind. We need to be tenderhearted. We need to be forgiving of what they may say or do that, it's like, it's just in the heat of the moment or things like that. And most of them they feel like you're the one that they have to, like, they're okay to do that with you, because you should be able to give that back and everything. So, it has been, it's really good. So even on those crazy days, it's like remembering God's grace, God, his patience with us, remembering those things happen and everything else. And then grow 8 arms, because that's really what you need to have to be able to do everything. Some days it's like our office has a set of windows. We're like the office is a corner office, I guess I should say, with 2 sets of windows, like one on one hallway, one on the other, right? So it's like sometimes we got both windows open and we're kind of like, okay, here you go, one side, and here you go, we're from the other side, and going back and forth between the 2 windows, dealing with people and things like that. And you just do it with as much grace as you possibly can. And then ask them to give you grace when you don't. Do it with all the grace you should have. So like our pastors know, I'm like, if I feel like I've walked in and been short or done something, I'm like, God has a very short leash on my emotions. And it's like, and my conviction status, it's like, okay, I'm usually walking back in within 5 minutes and go, okay, so sorry, I was so short, or whatever. And then keeping short accounts like that, I think for me has been super helpful, because I know I'm trying to make it right when I do mess up, because I will, and I do. So
yeah, these are great insights, even beyond the school office, for sure.
Right.
Okay, so kind of keeping with that same thought, I have had a number of opportunities to visit schools. I've been in a lot of different schools. It's really interesting to be in schools. You can almost tell the tone immediately when you walk in the school office. You can tell the tone of the school. The school office can easily become that dumping zone, maybe even a gossip headquarters. So talk with us about the importance of the spirit of the school office. Who sets that? And how do you keep that a place that is helpful and encouraging and not a place of gossip or negativity?
Right. Yeah, that's a difficult one kind of thing because it's so easy, right? So for us, I always feel like our administrator is the one who needs to set the tone for the school. It's like, what does he want our school culture that we've been working on with accreditation stuff and everything else in our school? It's like, so we've been talking a lot about our school culture and what is it and how do we formulate that and how do we encourage it and everything. And so, but our secretary and the staff, they're the ones who have to help spread that out into the school and everything else. So we need to make sure we're setting a God honoring tone in our office and around the school and everything. So having the mind of Christ, being humble, loving, forgiving, right? Romans 12 talks about the kind of guide for every Christian where it's a list of attitudes and actions that we should be making sure is evident in our life. So things like letting our love be genuine, being humble, blessing those who persecute us, scream at us and irritate us. Okay, I lied and never repaying evil for evil. Okay. But that gossip part of it is so easy to do without even realizing it sometimes. When I was thinking about this question, it was we just need to be so careful that we're not sharing for the sake of prayer, right? Okay. Or answering another parent's question who's a good friend with this other parent. And this other parent's child was in an accident or disciplined or something. And they're coming up to the window and go, yeah, I heard about Johnny's, accident or, they got in trouble or what. And it's like, and then we overshare what, even though, we know they're friends. And okay, so obviously they have their information from their friend, their other parent or whatever, but not really our place to talk about the discipline of another child with another parent or to talk about even an injury and everything else. I mean, over the 30 years, I just go, the things we were like, didn't even think about not sharing to things like the Privacy Acts and all those different things in the school office. Now it's like, okay, no, we can't share that information or we should not be because we're not supposed to. So it's being really careful with those kinds of things that are gossip, can you think, but we do them without even thinking about it and everything. The line can be really fuzzy sometimes because my school family is also my church family, is also my,
right.
My life family.
A lot of
because
connections.
they're right. It's like all these connections and interconnections that happen and everything else that it's like, where's the line kind of thing with what I can share and what I can't share and who can I talk with and everything else. So, Ephesians 4:29, it says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And honestly, grace has just been a huge theme for me over the last few years. It's like God's grace for me, to me, and then giving that grace to others as well. It just is, we need to just be graceful in all that we're doing in our office, in our life, everything. So yeah, that's, I think when you're talking about like the gossip headquarters, we very much so can have a tendency to fall into that trap without even meaning to and everything. So.
Yeah, like how you put it it often veers into oversharing, just because it becomes a topic. It's big news in the office and then having to stop from oversharing with the correct people. That was well put. So teamwork is essential. We often hear that it's the school secretary who runs the school. And we know that in so many ways, that is very true. The secretaries are the most knowledgeable. They have historical information. They guide the daily goings on in the school. What is the key to having the best teamwork, do you think, in your opinion, between the school office and the teachers and the administrators? What are your thoughts?
So an attitude of, I'm not alone in this. Okay. It's just not up to me to make the school run day in and day out. There was a period of time where I thought that it was. And God took a little bit of time to, right, kind of thing. And honestly, it's like for a while there, it was our pastors were our administrators and they didn't, it wasn't what they wanted to be doing kind of thing. And so they left the paperwork up to me and they left the it's like I ordered the books and I took care of the schedules and and they took care of the discipline. And I'm like, and I did everything else for the school and everything else. So when we hired a full-time school administrator, he was such a blessing. And he has been, it's been like 14 years now. But those first couple of years, it was just like, he'd be like, oh, no, that's my job. And I'm like, no, it's been more.
Yeah, getting everything reorganized and shifted back where it goes.
Yeah. So that he was so gracious in dealing with me that way and everything else and teaching me, because truly, I didn't have any formal school secretary training. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever really met a school secretary in our circles that has had formal school secretary training.
Yes, that's
like
so true.
Secretarial training, right? It's like they kind of fall into that job and everything else coming out of something else. So it's not about me doing all the job. I'm expected to know a lot of things. So a lot of people think, okay, well, the secretary, she knows everything and she takes care of everything. And I'm like, oh, no, ladies. Like, I'm not supposed to be the one taking care of everything. So I need to do my part, need to answer the phones, communicate information with the parents, help people who come looking for something, help. But the teachers, they teach and they deal with the students. And the administrators, well, they administrate. Okay. They teach, they lead, they guide activities at school. And the secretaries, we talked about this earlier. It's like we support. So we do whatever is needing to be done to help them do their jobs and everything well. So. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Everyone doing their part makes the best team. It seems profound, but that is the best team. Everybody doing their part together and supporting each other. It's perfect. Okay, so the heartbeat of this podcast is to be really practical and uplifting, and this already has been for sure. But Linda, what would you say are some practical ways that teachers and administrators could support the role of the school secretary or the office personnel? So what could they do for you?
Okay, so that's a tough one. Because like we've talked about here a couple of different times, it's like I truly believe we're there to be their support system. Okay, so they can do their leading and their teaching and they're doing the work that God's called them to do. We're just there to be their support in all of that. But can they help us? Yeah, because they can show the patience and the grace. And when we're having that extra busy or chaotic day, okay, hey, what can I pitch in and help with? Okay, do you need, it's like, hey, it looks like you were making some copies. You need me to finish them for you. I've always been, like I said, we have a great team at our school, and been very blessed. And many times it's like, they're just going, oh, hey, you know what? I won't make the copies. I won't ask you to make the copies. I'll go make them real quick myself, kind of thing. Or can I send a student? I'll start them. Can I send a student down to grab them later? I'm like, great, awesome. That'd be fantastic. So, just recognizing those times when we are a little overstretched, and it's being able to be, have the little bit of extra help and everything. That's always appreciated. So.
Yeah, that sensitivity to each other and to how we can help. Great insights. Okay, so as we wrap up this podcast, I don't want to leave out the office personnel, and you've done a lot of talking to them as well. But most of our listeners are going to be teachers or administrators, but I'm quite confident we have some office personnel listening as well. So what would you say to them as we wrap up by means of encouragement or advice from your position?
Well, I said earlier, when we were talking, it's like I've got a real heartbeat for our secretaries that are just around in Christian schools and things like that. The ability to know they're not alone. We're not the only ones going through what they're going through in an office and everything else and dealing with those things. So there was a quote I had from pastor and author Warren Wiersbe. He said, when God's work is done God's way, in obedience to God's truth, it will never lack God's blessing. So it's the remembrance that God's called us into a ministry. And so that ministry just happens to be in an office. We're not the teacher. We're not the administrator. We're just the secretary. Okay.
But that's a loaded word.
Just this right kind of thing. But we're more than just the secretary. It's a ministry. It's not just a job. And that's something for me over the years, I've really kind of oftentimes I will get in my rut and I'll have to remind myself this is a ministry, not just a job, right? And that God will strengthen you. He'll give you the wisdom you need to do the work. You work for the administrator or the pastor, but it's the one who God has placed over you. And then ultimately, God's the one you're working for and everything. I have said this occasionally. I always feel like when I started working for the church and school, I was like, this is it. I'm like, there's a message on Anna in the temple and serving day in and day out. And I was just like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to serve in the temple day in and day out and just be a blessing to God's people. And that's been my goal. It's a privilege, to be honest, to be able to work and do these things for God's people. I'm not a great evangelist. I'm not a great soul winner. But I can organize and I can help them. I can help the pastor be a great, because I can take care of the things, or help the administrator lead better because I can take care of things in the background. And so it's every job serves a purpose, and no matter what you're doing or who recognizes it or what our contributions are, whether they, we feel they're important or not, they are important. And it may not always feel like it, but the work is a blessing from the Lord. And so God has given us the ability to be able to do it. It's a gift. Romans 12 talks about all those gifts and the using them to serve God and his people. And I'm like, we don't all have the same gifts. Some are to teach, some are to, it's like some are exhorters, and some are just givers, and some administrate. And honestly, I'm like, I've always felt like it's like God's going to give me that ability to be able to administrate. I don't necessarily want to be an administrator. I'm like, but I can do that background organizing and administrating and taking care of and taking burdens off of, so that they can do their jobs better and to that. And so that's really in all of our roles and everything, but even as a school secretary especially, is just remembering that not necessarily are we getting overlooked. I think a lot of times people do really appreciate where the secretary's at, but is knowing that our service is for the Lord, and that it just needs to be everything we do for him. So
yeah, that's great. It is a gift. It definitely is. And I mean, what you just said, there was a picture of the body of Christ, just all those different gifts, talents, all working together, really to impact young people and then next generation to serve Christ. So excellent. Linda, I have to say, I really appreciate your perspective today. You're just so scripture centered in your approach to your work. And I just have no doubt that God has and will honor that. You've been a blessing to us on the show today. Thank you for really giving us a realistic look at the office, so that teachers and administrators can better know how to team with you all, to team with those who work in their offices. It's just been so great to have you on the show today.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
Listeners, thank you also for joining us today. I hope you were challenged and encouraged really by what Linda shared with us today. Some great thoughts, great insights. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to learn more about the podcast. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and go follow us on social media. Now it's time to get back to your day. But it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through his grace working in you. Go do what God has called you to do.